This week from the global lane, where in the world Asia? North Korea will likely be a top foreign policy challenge for the United States in 2018. But what about China? Island construction in the South China Sea continues at a frantic pace. On the home front, immigration reform will likely be near the top of the agenda when Congress returns from the holiday break. Should we shut the door or welcome people with open arms? And we'll set it straight on millennials leaving home in search of significance, and introduce you to one woman who's changing lives by moving out of her comfort zone. Our man on the street asked people about their intentions for the new year and all those unkept resolutions in 2017. And I'll drive it home with my commentary. Is America at a foreign policy crossroads? Is war likely in 2018? And it's all right here, right now, from the global lane. From North Korea to the Middle East, President Trump certainly faced a number of major foreign policy challenges in 2017. Tough talk, tempered by U.S. diplomacy, will likely be Mr. Trump's modus operandi in 2018. While the United States is now relying on China to do more to rein in North Korea and its missile program, the president has labeled China a strategic competitor. Nowhere is that description more apparent than in one of the world's busiest shipping regions. New satellite imagery shows China has built more artificial military bases in the disputed South China Sea. The United States says that action poses a threat to countries in the area, especially for the fishing industry, and it also poses a security threat to the region. What might we expect from China in the coming year? Friend or foe? Well, joining us with some perspective is George Washington University Professor Gregg Brazinsky. He's author of the book Winning the Third World. So, Mr. Brazinsky, friend, foe, strategic competitor, how do you describe China?
Well, I would say China will be a little bit of both. There are clearly areas where we have different interests with China. The South China Sea, as you mentioned, might be one of them. It's an area where the United States is very concerned about freedom of navigation, but China has been very concerned with, number one, its own security, and number two, in making sure that it gains the upper hands in territorial disputes. I also think that we have somewhat divergent interests on North Korea, although there are also issues on the Korean Peninsula where I think the United States and China can work together. I think the economies of the United States and China have become very deeply interconnected, as everybody knows. Our companies from Silicon Valley are extremely active and increasingly reliant on China for greater profits. And, trade with China China remains a leading trading partner of the United States. And so I think economically the two are interconnected. So I think in the coming year, we'll probably see a continuing blend of competition and cooperation in U.S. relations with China. I think one aspect of the Trump administration is that you see both of these aspects spoken about very vocally. 1 minute Trump is saying, oh, the Chinese are our good friends and our allies, and you'll have these very cordial meetings and summits with Xi Jinping. The next minute, he's talking about how the Chinese are competitors. So I think, one of the differences between, say, the Trump administration and previous administrations is I think, the previous administrations, they all knew that we were going to have a blend of competition and cooperation in our relationship with China. The Trump administration, I think it's the same thing, but it's just more vocal about what the areas of competition are and what the potential areas of cooperation are.
Well, why are the Chinese continuing to build bases in the South China Sea, even though they know it may damage relations not only with the U.S., but also China's neighbors? And is Trump likely to just allow them to be a hegemon in that area?
Well, I think, first of all, why are they doing it? China has drawn what they call a 9-dash line, or, sometimes it's been an 11-dash line, which is not recognized by international law. But nonetheless, China says that everything that falls within that line is Chinese territory. I think there's a lot of reasons why China is so insistent on the 9-dash line. Some of them are strategic. They give China a strategic advantage in any potential conflict with the United States or its allies if it's able to sort of create a reality that is China's border. I think I think it's also sort of a cultural and ideological issue that connects to Chinese nationalism. There's this sense that China is going to reclaim its territory and that it's not going to be bullied by the United States or the West.
Another potential flashpoint, of course, North Korea. And I know that China has gone along with the UN sanctions, tougher sanctions against North Korea. But yet I just saw the other day some satellite imagery of Chinese ships trading oil with North Korea. So how likely will it be that Trump will be able to use China against North Korea to rein them in?
I never thought that trying to use China against North Korea was a good idea or a good strategy. I don't think China will ever give us what we want on North Korea, in part because their perception of North Korea is very different from the perception of North Korea in the United States. In the United States, we tend more or less to take a view of North Korea as dangerous, threatening, evil, crazy. All of those things are how the Trump administration has tended to characterize Kim Jong-un and the North Korean regime. I think there's growing disillusionment with North Korea among the Chinese and China's leadership, but there's also still some part of China's leadership which is sympathetic towards North Korea. The two countries have a long history together as allies. China, of course, dispatched millions of Chinese volunteers to aid North Korea during the Korean War in 1950 to 1953 and make sure that North Korea was not obliterated. There was a long history of fraternal solidarity between China and North Korea, and even though that's faded, I think there's some part of it that's still there. The idea of North Korea as a buffer is something that still figures into the mindsets of some Chinese policymakers, although there's also some other Chinese policymakers who are expressing privately different views about North Korea and saying, well, it's actually not such a strategic asset anymore because, one, it can drag China into war, and two, these nuclear tests also can pose a danger to China. They may go along with sanctions in the UN, but they're never going to completely clamp down on all of the Chinese businesses that are engaged with North Korea in one way or another.
Well, you've given us a lot to think about, and I'm sure you'll be keeping an eye on it in 2018. Professor Gregg Brazinsky, thanks for joining us today from George Washington University. Appreciate your insights.
Thank you for having me.
Another hot issue in 2018. Here on the Homefront, politicians will debate immigration reform. How can Americans remain safe from terrorism, drugs, and criminals who want to do harm to the nation? Muslim immigrants, one from Uzbekistan, another from Bangladesh, were responsible for separate attacks in New York City in 2017. In the aftermath of those terror incidents, security will likely be tightened. And President Trump says he wants to do away with the immigration lottery and do a better job of vetting immigrants. American Christians have struggled with immigration for a long time now. Gone are those massive waves of people that we saw flowing from Turkey and into Western Europe back in 2015. But how should we respond? Yes, we want to protect our nation, but at the same time, Christ calls us to be good Samaritans by reaching out to strangers, the lost and hurting, the tired, the poor, huddled masses yearning to be free. Well, last summer, I traveled to Greece, where I found Christians there viewing immigrants through the eyes of Christ. Instead of rejecting them and treating them with disdain, they embraced them and changed their lives. I'm standing on Mars Hill. This is the very spot where the Apostle Paul first introduced the Athenians to the gospel message. He talked to them about their unknown God and then introduced them to the one true God. 2,000 years later, evangelists are still preaching the gospel here, but instead of traveling long distances like they did during the time of Paul, those they're hoping to reach are coming to them. They're coming by the tens of thousands. Refugees and migrants fleeing war and hardship in their home countries, seeking refuge and a more promising future. Greece is their first stop in Europe.
I came to Greece with no purpose in mind. Not for money, not for wealth. I just want to forget what happened to my children. I want to live in a safe place and forget my children.
In 2015, a sniper in the Syrian civil war killed Amal's husband. A week later, while still grieving his death, she traveled to see her sister.
I left my sons at home and went to visit my sister, who lives 7 hours away. Her husband had just passed away. I went to comfort her. ISIS members came in the house at night while my sons were sleeping and slaughtered them.
Traumatized, Amal left the hurt and heartache of Syria behind. She made her way to Turkey and then Greece. Alone in a strange land, Amal, which means hope in Arabic, soon lost hope.
I have no one to talk to. I feel like my head is going to explode. I cannot sleep if I do not take a sleeping aid. I'm not used to being alone. I'm used to having my sons around me.
Around that same time, other refugees found a caring family at the Apostolic Evangelical Church of Thessaloniki.
We saw that need coming to our door, coming to our city, and we had to react.
As a part of that outreach, a volunteer named Katie approached Amal.
I sat down next to her and I hung her and I said, "It's okay to pray with you in God?" And she said, "It's okay."
When Katie saw me, she hugged me and helped me. She took me to church where I showered and she gave me clothes. When I visited the church on Friday, I felt so comfortable and I slept that night without taking a sleeping pill. I was so happy. I loved the program. Everything I heard was so true. It's all in the Bible. It was a happy day for me.
Afterward, Amal underwent an operation to remove a spot on her liver. She then told CBN News how the experience grew her faith.
It's true that my children were taken away, but God stood by me when I needed Him during the surgery. After surgery, my connection with God became stronger because I got to the church more often and I could trust God. This is the only thing that matters.
As a result, Amal made a big decision, then demonstrated her commitment to Christ.
I was baptized because I trust God so much.
The United Nations placed Amal in an apartment along with a Muslim family. Although she would prefer to share housing with a Christian widow like herself, Amal told us she wants God to use her where she is.
I want to show God's love to others here and be an example to people. I'm praying that I'll forget my pain and experience a new, healthy life full of joy.
And after visiting regularly with Amal, her new friend Katie is optimistic for the future.
Amal means hope. And I think nothing is by chance. Yes, I think there is hope for hope. There is hope for Amal.
Leaving the home front and serving overseas. When questioned, many millennials say they want to do something significant in life before settling down, marrying, and starting a family. Many young Christians are answering God's call to Asia. Our next guest sets it straight on leaving the comforts of home and serving in a different culture. Hannah Larson now lives in Thailand, where she's sharing the good news and helping young Thais caught up in sex trafficking. Hannah, thanks so much for joining us. Why Thailand, of all places?
One of my friends at that time studied abroad in Thailand, and she came back and she was telling me about Thailand, and she learned about human trafficking and sex tourism here. So that just really hit my heart again. And I'm a teacher. I studied education. So when I was in college studying education, I was looking into jobs. I knew I wanted to do missions, and I just got an email out of the blue that said teach English in Thailand, and I'd already been thinking about Thailand. So I just applied for that, and God just really directed all the next steps and led me here.
So let me get it straight here. So you'd never been to Thailand. How hard was it then to leave your family and friends, start a new life in a different culture? I'm sure you experienced culture shock.
Yeah, I just felt so much peace from God to come, and I think that's what helped me feel confident. Even just coming on a one-way ticket, I only had exactly enough money in my bank account for the program and the plane ticket, which I just felt peace about. And once I signed up for the course and the program, God just really confirmed it. I had second cousins that moved to Chiang Mai at the same time as I was moving to Thailand, but I didn't plan that. So God helped use them to help me.
So I guess God really helped you assimilate. And I know you're a teacher, but you're also part of an international organization that's helping young Thai girls caught up in sex trafficking. So tell us about that. How are you helping?
Yes, I'm helping in the organization. When I first joined it, they really needed someone to help actually teach English, to help the women out of the bars. And one way that that helps is because the women that are working in the bars want to learn English because all their customers are foreigners. So it's a real open door. So we just began by going and doing bar outreach. We just go into the bars and sit and order soda, a drink, and talk to them. And we made some cards and would just introduce ourselves and invite them to learn English for free or for really cheap. And they were really interested. So we just started by a small English class, and God just helped it grow and grow. And in that, I would teach English, but I would also, with every ending of the lesson, I'd share a Bible verse that connects to the lesson, and I'd do a prayer for them. And through that, just relationship building, I got to know the women more, and they became really interested in God. And through that, after the first half a year, I got really close with a bunch of the students, and 10 of them came to accept Christ in one day. And it was just really God's leading in them and preparing for that. We were doing worship songs and prayer for them. And through that change in their life, they began to see the hope that God had more for them. They're working in the bars because they're from poor families, most of them in the northeast of Thailand, and their families are in debt, a lot of debt. And so they don't really see any other option. And it's the woman's responsibility in Buddhist culture to provide for the family. So she'd have to go and work in the bars, and sometimes her parents knew what she was doing to get the money and sometimes not. So then we'd start to talk with the woman about, okay, well, what are your dreams in life? How can we help you with that? And at first we started to try to help them get small businesses that they were passionate about. But we realized that not everyone could start. Small business is pretty easy to do in Thailand, but it wasn't right for some of them. So then we started connecting with other organizations also that do different training programs. And so some of them train the women in hair salons, some in bakery. There's often card making and jewelry making that's a part of that. So just finding the right path for each individual woman. And some of them even ended up returning back to their hometowns and sharing with their families about Jesus as well. But also just starting a life there to be with their family. Most of them have children as well that live with their parents in the Northeast, so they're not with their own kids, but they're working to provide for their kids. So some of them felt led to go back and be with their children.
And Hannah, what advice do you have for young millennials who may want to serve overseas and find meaning in their lives and helping others?
I would say seek out God, pray, and seek out opportunities as well, like prayerfully doing that. And don't be afraid and see non-traditional ways to do it too, because there can be ways to even earn money while doing missions. And even if not that, God will provide what's needed.
Okay, stepping out in faith. Thank you, Hannah Larson, for sharing your life with us and what's going on in Thailand. God bless you in the coming year.
Thank you. God bless you too.
If you're like me, when one year comes to an end and another begins, you always hope and pray for a better year ahead. And you may make one or even several New Year's resolutions. Well, we asked our man Mung Fei Lee to take it to the streets to ask people what their resolutions are for 2018 and if they've actually kept their resolutions for 2017.
Happy New Year, everyone! Hey, I made my New Year resolution in 2017, and of course, I broke it. So let's find out today how people they did in 2017 and what their New Year resolutions are in 2018. Let's go! Sir, tell me, what was your New Year resolution for 2017?
Just provide a little bit better for my family, you know. And this year is, I will, because I just purchased a home.
Oh, congratulations. May I know how big is your family?
Just my wife and my 2 dogs. Well, of course, I have 2 sons. You know, now they both have grandchildren, you know, with them.
What New Year resolution did you make for 2017?
I really didn't make any, but I mean, every year my New Year resolution is to always be a better father, you know, get closer to God, and be the best man that I can be.
I don't believe in New Year's resolutions.
Ooh, tell me why.
I don't know. I mean, I just go with the flow. I'd rather just go with the flow than say I'm going to do something and not do it.
Yeah, let's just say if you have to make one for 2018, what would that be?
I don't know. What's your New Year's resolution?
I can tell you, it's a secret. It depends on how much time you have. But anyway, thank you. Well, what's your New Year resolution for 2018?
To bless everybody, to be in peace. I love everybody, and I just want the world to be at peace.
Man, that's very touching. Thank you. Thank you. Did you have a great Christmas?
I had a blessed Christmas. I woke up this morning. Yeah.
What was your New Year resolution for 2017?
To stop smoking cigarettes.
And what about your New Year resolution for 2018?
Go to Portugal.
Why Portugal?
Most of her family is from Portugal.
Oh man, hello, good morning. Well, let me ask you, what was your New Year resolution for 2017?
My age, I don't make resolutions. I just hope to wake up every morning. Once I put my feet on the floor, I'm good.
2017 was certainly a memorable year on the global lane. This year, we started to see a shift in American foreign policy as the Trump doctrine took shape. There will be no more apologies for past American behavior, no more appeasement of those who have opposed the vital interests of the United States. Remember this warning while North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un was in the middle of a record number of ballistic missile launches? Trump had just about enough of the rocket man's threats.
North Korea best not make any more threats to the United States. They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen.
The Trump doctrine is coming into focus. The United States will intervene whenever and wherever necessary to protect the interests of America first. Then we'll act on behalf of our friends. So did we swear in a hawkish president in 2017? No, not so fast. Trump appears unwilling to spend American tax dollars on unnecessary and unwise intervention. This is a president who said the United States has wasted $6 trillion on wars since 9/11. Now, some experts say the cost to American taxpayers is actually closer to $5 trillion, with about $2 trillion of that spent in Afghanistan alone. Well, regardless, it's a lot of money. And Mr. Trump says it could have been better spent on improving infrastructure and security right here at home. Watch this video that went viral recently on the internet. It's former President George W. Bush, I think from 2007, suggesting why we often get bogged down in wars.
Money trumps peace sometimes. In other words, commercial interests are very powerful interests.
A lot of money can be made on the weapons of war. Each plane shot down, each Tomahawk missile fired must be replaced. Cruise missiles now cost about $1 million each. 320 Tomahawks were fired on Baghdad. Remember the March 2003 shock and awe campaign against Saddam Hussein? Well, in today's dollars, that would be at least $325 million for those missiles. Oh, and by the way, if an F-35 fighter jet crashes or is shot down, they currently cost about $95 million each. And then, of course, there's the money to be made in rebuilding a country's infrastructure destroyed by bombs, rockets, and mortars. Just take a look at Mosul. These are exclusive images taken by CBN News on a recent visit there. The cost to rebuild that city because of ISIS? More than $1 billion. So pray for this president in 2018 for wisdom and protection from evil forces. Maybe what's really at the heart of all this impeachment talk is not just resistance to the draining of the Washington swamp, but also a response to the president opposing many of those commercial interests that President Bush mentioned. So what's ahead in 2018? Will Donald Trump's tough-talking tweets and rhetoric lead to war on the Korean Peninsula? I think the president uses them as a tool to get his way in negotiations. Precision strikes to take out North Korea's nuclear and missile technology appear increasingly likely. But a lot will depend on how North Korea responds to tougher economic sanctions imposed on that regime. Much will also depend on China and if the communist government continues to enable Kim Jong-un. And what about the Middle East? Might Turkey, Iran, and Hezbollah start a war with Israel? Turkey President Erdogan still has delusions of reestablishing the Ottoman Empire. He wants to regain Islamic control over all of Jerusalem. Trump and America's moderate Arab allies aren't likely to allow that to happen. Saudi Arabia is already fighting a proxy war against Iran in Yemen and Syria. Trump has worked hard to help solidify Israel's quiet alliance with moderate Arab states. And it's another part of that Trump doctrine, bringing Middle East countries together in opposing the greatest threat to regional security, Iran. Will we see a new war in the Middle East because of U.S. recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital? I guess it'll all depend on perceptions of weakness and strength. And one thing I've learned from my time in the Middle East over the past 3 decades is that the words of President Ronald Reagan often ring true. He said, quote, "We maintain the peace through our strength. Weakness only invites aggression," end quote. Well, if Turkey, Iran, and Hezbollah see that America and its allies are divided in the Middle East, they will move militarily. If they see a wall of strength, not in words but also in action, they're more likely to back down. As for Russia, the same. Despite an investigation that is unlikely to find collusion between the president and Russia, Mr. Trump has moved forward in imposing tougher sanctions on that country. He's also sent defensive weaponry to Ukraine. Those actions have angered the Kremlin. But again, peace through strength. Russia is unlikely to act when America and her allies show unity and strength. In 2018, Russia is more likely to cooperate with the United States to end the wars in Afghanistan and Syria. A lot of oil, gas, and other commercial interests are at stake in those countries, but peace in both countries is long overdue. Afghans and Syrians have suffered immensely. They deserve a better future. So there's a lot to pray about on the global lane in the new year, but let's not worry about the future. We're told in Matthew 6:34, "Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own." Yes, there will be many troubles in 2018, but I pray that it'll be a year of tremendous blessings and godly favor for each one of you. And remember the previous verse of Matthew 6. Let's not forget that. Verse 33 says, "But seek first the kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well." So keep seeking, keep knocking on that door in 2018. And that's it from the Global Lane. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, SoundCloud, and iTunes. And until next time, be blessed.